Mace Windu came within moments of ending Emperor Palpatine before Anakin intervened. But what if he had chosen a different path? What if, instead of rushing into battle, he consulted Grandmaster Yoda first? Would the Jedi have uncovered Sidious's master plan before it was too late? Today, we explore how this single decision could have changed the fate of the galaxy forever. If Yoda had taken control of the situation instead of Mace Windu, the confrontation with Palpatine might have unfolded very differently. Unlike Windu, whose direct and aggressive approach was driven by urgency, Yoda possessed centuries of wisdom and an unparalleled understanding of the Force. He would have recognized the dangers of acting hastily, especially against an enemy as cunning as Darth Sidious. Rather than storming into the Chancellor's office with a small team of Jedi Masters, Yoda might have taken a more calculated approach. He would have sought to understand Palpatine's full plan, uncovering the extent of his control over the Senate and the clone army. With patience and careful maneuvering, he could have devised a strategy to expose Sidious's true identity to the public, turning the Republic against him before the Sith Lord could tighten his grip on power. Yoda also understood the emotional vulnerabilities of Anakin Skywalker better than Windu did. Instead of alienating Anakin with distrust, he might have attempted to bring him closer, guiding him away from Palpatine's influence before the Sith could fully corrupt him. With the right words and timing, Yoda could have planted the seeds of doubt in Anakin's mind, making him question whether Sidious was truly the key to saving Padme. If Yoda had personally led the confrontation against Sidious, he would not have underestimated the Sith Lord's abilities. He would have known that a direct attack was dangerous without a solid backup plan. Perhaps he would have sought to sever Palpatine's ties to the Senate first, ensuring that even if the Jedi failed to kill him, he would be weakened politically. Or maybe he would have recognized that destroying the Sith required something more than just a duel. It required shifting the hearts and minds of those under their influence. Had Yoda's wisdom guided the Jedi response, the fate of the galaxy could have taken a different course. But even the greatest Jedi Master could not foresee everything, and against the darkness of the Sith, even patience might not have been enough. If Mace Windu had chosen to rally more Jedi before confronting Darth Sidious, the battle could have played out in an entirely different way. Instead of taking only 3 Jedi Masters Kit Fisto, Cecitine, and Agent Colorinto the Chancellor's office, he could have assembled a much larger force, one that included Grandmaster Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and perhaps even Anakin Skywalker himself. With a united Jedi front, the chances of success would have increased significantly. Yoda, the wisest and most experienced of the Jedi, might have been able to anticipate Sidious's tactics and counter them with his own mastery of the Force. Obi-Wan, known for his adaptability and defensive combat style, would have provided a strong counterbalance to Sidious's raw power. If Anakin had been present, seeing the full weight of the Jedi Order standing against Palpatine might have shaken his faith in the Sith, preventing his fall before it ever truly began. Beyond sheer numbers, a coordinated effort would have given the Jedi more options. Instead of attempting a direct arrest, they could have worked to expose Sidious publicly, turning the Senate against him before he had a chance to declare the Jedi traitors. With proper planning, they might have neutralized his influence before he could issue Order 66, ensuring that the clone army did not turn against them. But gathering more Jedi also carried risks. A larger force might have attracted too much attention, giving Sidious time to prepare for an ambush. If Anakin had still chosen to side with Palpatine, the Jedi would have faced not only a Sith Lord but also the full might of the Republic's military. The battle could have escalated into an all-out war within Coruscant itself, further destabilizing the Republic at a critical moment. Still, with Yoda, Obi-Wan, and other powerful Jedi standing together, the Sith's plan might not have unfolded so easily. The fate of the galaxy hinged on a few key decisions, and had Mace Windu chosen unity over urgency, everything could have changed in an instant. If Mace Windu and Yoda had taken a more strategic approach, they might have prevented Anakin from falling into Sidious's grasp entirely. Rather than confronting the Sith Lord immediately, they could have taken the time to fully understand the depth of his influence over Anakin and found a way to counter it. Anakin's greatest vulnerability was his fear of losing Padme, a fear that Sidious expertly exploited. Instead of dismissing Anakin's emotions as dangerous attachments, Yoda and Mace could have approached him with understanding, guiding him toward a solution that didn't involve the dark side. If they had reassured him that he wasn't alone, that the Jedi could help him, that he still had choices, Desperation might not have driven him straight into Palpatine's arms. A carefully orchestrated plan could have involved separating Anakin from Sidious before he had a chance to intervene. If Yoda or Obi-Wan had spoken to Anakin before Mace's attempt to arrest the Chancellor, they might have been able to plant enough doubt in his mind to make him hesitate when the moment of decision arrived. Perhaps if Obi-Wan had been the one to reveal Palpatine's Sith identity, Anakin would have trusted the truth more readily. Additionally, if Mace had invited Anakin to help in the confrontation instead of keeping him at a distance, Anakin's role might have shifted from an outsider caught between two sides to an active participant in bringing down the Sith. Without feeling isolated or mistrusted, he may have been more willing to see Palpatine's deception for what it was. But timing was everything. Even a single moment of hesitation could change fate. If the Jedi had acted with patience and foresight, they might have steered Anakin away from his darkest choice. Instead, events moved too quickly, emotions flared too strongly, and the galaxy was left to suffer the consequences of what could have been prevented. If the Jedi had moved with greater coordination, they might have uncovered the hidden danger lurking beneath the surface of the Clone Wars. Order 66. The Jedi were skilled strategists and warriors, but their greatest blind spot was their trust in the Republic's military specifically, the clone troopers they had fought beside for years. Had Mace Windu, Yoda, and other Jedi leaders recognized the full extent of Palpatine's control, they might have investigated deeper into the clones' programming. Instead of focusing solely on the Sith Lord's political power, they could have turned their attention to Kamino, where the clones were engineered, and searched for any hidden directives implanted within them. A secret as massive as Order 66 was bound to have traces, and with careful planning they might have extracted the truth before it was too late. If they had learned of the inhibitor chips that forced the clones to obey Palpatine's command, the Jedi could have taken countermeasures. They might have quietly removed the chips from key units or developed a way to override the signal that triggered them. Even if they couldn't disable the entire protocol, warning their scattered forces could have saved thousands of Jedi from being caught off guard when the order was given. Beyond technology, a coordinated attack on Sidious himself could have eliminated the threat before he could activate Order 66 at all. If the Jedi Council had gathered in full strength, working together instead of acting in isolated duels and desperate battles, they might have overwhelmed Palpatine before he had a chance to make his final move. Without him issuing the command, the clones would have remained loyal soldiers of the Republic, and the Jedi Order might have endured. But the Sith's greatest weapon was deception. By the time the Jedi saw the truth, it was already too late. If they had acted sooner, more strategically, the entire course of history might have changed in a single, decisive moment. If Yoda and Mace Windu had confronted Palpatine together, the Sith Lord's reign might have ended before it even began. Mace alone was able to hold his own against Sidious, even gaining the upper hand. But with Yoda arguably the most powerful Jedi of his era fighting alongside him, the battle could have taken a drastically different turn. Mace was a master of Vapad, a lightsaber form that thrived on channeling an opponent's dark side energy against them. His ability to anticipate and counter Sith aggression made him one of the few Jedi capable of standing toe-to-toe with Palpatine. Yoda, on the other hand, was a master of agility and wisdom, wielding the Force with unmatched precision. Together, their combined strengths would have been overwhelming. Palpatine's greatest advantage wasn't just his power, it was his ability to manipulate events in his favor. When Mace confronted him alone, Palpatine used Anakin's presence to turn the tide, creating the perfect moment to execute his final deception. But with Yoda also in the fight, there would have been no room for such a ploy. Anakin's arrival wouldn't have guaranteed the Sith's survival. Instead, he might have witnessed firsthand the true nature of the dark side, with two Jedi Masters proving that even Sidious could be defeated. The duel itself would have been a spectacle of sheer power. Yoda's speed and mastery of the Force combined with Mace's raw combat prowess would have made Palpatine's usual tactics far less effective. With nowhere to run and no opportunity for trickery, the Sith Lord might have been overwhelmed, bringing an end to his grand plan before the Republic fell. But the Jedi underestimated their enemy, and they acted alone instead of together. Had they coordinated their attack, had they truly worked as one, the dark side's grip on the galaxy might have been broken in a single night. Palpatine was a master strategist, always thinking several moves ahead. If he sensed that the Jedi were approaching with overwhelming force, perhaps Yoda, Mace Windu, and other council members united against him, he wouldn't have risked direct confrontation. Unlike the Jedi, who often acted with honor and conviction, Sidious had no shame in retreating if it meant ensuring his ultimate victory. Rather than allowing himself to be cornered in his office, he might have vanished into the shadows, forcing the Jedi into an exhausting hunt. With his deep understanding of Sith history, he could have drawn inspiration from Darth Bane, disappearing into exile while allowing the Republic to crumble under its own instability. In doing so, he would have forced the Jedi into a war not just of lightsabers, but of politics, deception, and attrition and extended conflict that would wear them down over time. Meanwhile, his influence would remain, embedded within the Republic's fractured government. Corrupt senators, still loyal to him, could have continued his work in secret, destabilizing any attempt by the Jedi to restore balance. The war against the Separatists might have dragged on indefinitely, keeping the clones and Jedi locked in an endless cycle of conflict. And in that chaos, Palpatine would have waited, rebuilding his power, seeking a new apprentice, perhaps even manipulating Anakin from afar, ensuring that the Chosen One still felt a darkness on his own. This scenario might have been even worse for the Jedi than Order 66 itself. Instead of a swift and brutal purge, they would have faced a slow and painful decline, never knowing when or where the Sith would strike next. Their resources, already stretched thin, would have dwindled further. Fear and doubt would have spread within their ranks. And when the moment was right, Palpatine would have returned, more powerful and prepared than ever. The Sith never relied on brute force alone. They thrived in the shadows, striking only when the time was perfect. If the Jedi had come with overwhelming numbers, Palpatine might have simply ensured that time never came until it was already too late. If the Jedi had taken a more strategic approach, they might have been able to turn the Senate against Palpatine before he labeled them as traitors. The Republic had already been at war for years, and while Palpatine had gained immense power, not every senator fully trusted him. Figures like Bail Organa and Monday Mothma had growing concerns about his increasing control. If the Jedi had gathered undeniable proof of his Sith identity, perhaps by secretly recording their confrontation or exposing his connections to Dooku and the Separatist Sith, could have changed everything. Rather than rushing to arrest him with only a handful of Jedi masters, they could have used their political allies to build a case against him. A public trial, a formal accusation before the Senatif handled carefully, could have shifted public perception before Palpatine had the chance to act. The Jedi had spent years as protectors of the Republic, and while propaganda had begun to paint them as warriors instead of peacekeepers, their influence still held weight. A well-executed revelation of the Sith Lord's deception might have turned key senators against him, forcing him to defend himself rather than dictate the Republic's future unchallenged. But the risk was immense. Palpatine had masterfully woven himself into the fabric of the Republic, and his web of control extended far beyond the surface. Many senators owed him their positions, and others feared the instability that would come from exposing him. Even if the Jedi succeeded in revealing the truth, there was no guarantee the Senate would act against him. He could have played the victim, twisting the narrative, claiming the Jedi were attempting a coup. His emergency powers, granted willingly by the Senate, gave him the legal framework to turn the Republic's forces against them in an instant. In the end, the Jedi's greatest failure wasn't just their lack of strategy, it was their lack of time. By the time they saw the full scale of Palpatine's plan, he had already won. Without Palpatine manipulating him in that crucial moment, Anakin's fate might have taken a different path. His fall to the dark side wasn't just about raw power, it was about desperation, fear, and the belief that he had no other choice. Palpatine masterfully orchestrated a scenario where Anakin felt trapped, where his emotions were pushed to the brink, leaving him vulnerable to a single, life-altering decision. But if that moment never came, if the Jedi handled things differently, would he still have turned? Anakin's greatest weakness was his fear of loss. His visions of Padme's death consumed him, and Palpatine offered him the only solution that seemed possible through the dark side. But without the Sith Lord whispering in his ear at the perfect moment, that fear might not have controlled him as completely. If Mace Windu had taken a more measured approach, if he had brought Yoda or other Jedi into the decision-making process, Anakin could have had the space to think, to seek another way forward. Even more importantly, if the Jedi had built more trust with Anakin, instead of constantly questioning his loyalty, he might have confided in them. Instead, he felt isolated, torn between two worlds, neither of which fully accepted him. If the Jedi had recognized his struggle sooner, they could have guided him differently, helping him process his fears, rather than letting Palpatine exploit them. A true conversation with Obi-Wan, a moment of reassurance from Padme's small changes could have made all the difference. But the darkness was always there, just beneath the surface. Anakin had long struggled with anger, impatience, and a need for control. Even without Palpatine's influence in that exact moment, the seeds of his fall had already been planted. If not then, would he have fallen later? Would another moment of crisis push him to the same choice? Or was there still a chance, however small, that he could have walked away from the edge before it was too late? If Palpatine was eliminated or captured before he could execute his final plan, the fate of the Republic would still hang in the balance. While his removal would strip the Sith of their control, the damage he inflicted on the political system would not be undone so easily. After years of war, the Republic was already teetering on the edge of collapse, and without a clear leader to guide the transition, chaos could quickly follow. Many senators had grown accustomed to Palpatine's centralized authority, and not all of them would be eager to return power to the old ways. Some might argue that a strong leader was still necessary to prevent the Republic from falling apart, leading to a dangerous power struggle among those seeking to fill the void. Figures like Mas Amedda and other high-ranking officials loyal to Palpatine might have tried to maintain his rule in some form, presenting him as a martyr and using his absence as justification for even stricter measures. Meanwhile, those opposed to his rule, such as Bail Organa and Monday Mothma, would push for immediate democratic reforms, hoping to dismantle the authoritarian system before another dictator could rise. The clone army, still programmed for obedience, could become a critical factor in the transition. Without Palpatine to command them, their loyalty would be uncertain. If the Jedi were able to take control, they might prevent military suppression of the Senate, but if another figure seized command, perhaps a surviving Sith, a rogue Republic general, or even a Jedi willing to take extreme measures, the Republic could find itself under yet another form of authoritarian rule. Ultimately, peace would not be guaranteed. While eliminating Palpatine would remove the head of the Sith's plan, the Republic had already been reshaped into something fragile and unstable. Whether it could return to democracy or fall into further conflict would depend on the choices made in the critical moments that followed. Even without Palpatine, the fate of the Republic would be far from certain. Without Palpatine's rise to power, the entire Star Wars timeline would be drastically different. The Sith's influence over the galaxy wouldn't be as absolute, and the key events that shaped Luke and Leia's destinies might never have occurred. Their very existence, at least in the way we know it, would be in question. If Anakin never became Darth Vader, Padme might have survived, and their children could have been raised by their parents rather than hidden away. Luke and Leia wouldn't have grown up in secrecy, unaware of their heritage. Instead, they might have been raised within the Republic, possibly even trained as Jedi under the guidance of Yoda or Obi-Wan. Without the need for a rebellion, their lives would have taken a completely different course. But would they have ever reached their full potential? The struggles they endured in the original timeline were what shaped them into the galaxy's greatest heroes. Without that conflict, would they have ever discovered their true power? The absence of Palpatine also raises another question: would Darth Vader even exist? Anakin's fall to the dark side was orchestrated by the Sith Lord, manipulating his fears and desires. Without that influence, he might have remained a Jedi, perhaps even fulfilling his role as the Chosen One in a much different way. But his internal struggles wouldn't simply disappear. He was always a warrior, torn between his emotions and his duty. Would another threat, another war, another deception eventually push him down a similar path? The fate of the galaxy could have taken an entirely new direction. The Republic might have endured, but it wouldn't have been without challenges. With no Palpatine to unite enemies under a common cause, political strife could still have torn the Republic apart. A new war could have emerged, not between Jedi and Sith, but between factions seeking power in the vacuum left behind. The struggle between light and dark was never just about one man. It was a battle woven into the very fabric of the Force. By consulting Yoda, Mace Windu could have dramatically altered the course of history. A well-planned Jedi strike might have ended the Sith threat before it consumed the galaxy. But would Anakin still have played into Sidious's hands? Or could he have been saved? Do you think the Jedi could have stopped Palpatine if Mace Windu had waited for Yoda? Or was the dark side's influence already too strong? Let us know in the comments. And if you love deep Star Wars, what if scenarios, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more alternate galaxy explorations.